Hey, Soul Stories fam. We've got a swoon-worthy love story for you today. Let's jump in and tell us, what city are you watching from? The wind howled through the roadside forest, swirling dry leaves into the night. A sleek black Mercedes sped down the empty highway, cutting through the thick darkness. Inside, the silence was suffocating. Amanda sat curled up in the passenger seat, clutching her handbag tightly, her eyes fixed on the misted window. Sparse utility poles slid away into the distance, each one slicing into her mind like a knife. She knew she had made a mistake, simply because she wanted to know where $10,000 had disappeared from their joint account. She had called Andrew's accountant. What she thought was harmless was enough to wound his twisted pride. The car jerked to a stop in front of an abandoned rest area. The roof sagged, the rusty sign hung askew, and broken windows reflected the headlights in jagged shards. The scene looked like a forgotten wasteland. Andrew didn't turn off the engine. He turned to her, his cold gaze piercing. "Get out!" Amanda flinched. "Andrew, where are we? What are you doing?" His voice cut like a blade. 37 miles from home. Far enough for you to think, close enough for you to know you can walk back. On the way, I hope you remember never to question me again. Her voice caught. "You're leaving me here? In the rain at night? I just wanted." Andrew let out a harsh laugh. "Wanted what? To humiliate me in front of my friends by questioning money? Amanda, I earn the money. I manage it. And you? You smile politely in public. That's your place. Don't forget it." Rain pounded harder against the windshield, the drumming urging her on. Andrew leaned closer, his voice dripping with contempt. "Get out. And learn to keep quiet." Amanda's heart ached, but strangely, she didn't cry. She had shed too many tears in the years of endurance. Her tears had run dry, leaving only weary emptiness. The door swung open. Cold wind whipped her face, rain soaking her hair and clothes. Her high heels splashed into the puddled concrete, water spraying up around them. Andrew stepped on the gas, the Mercedes roaring off, leaving behind fading red taillights that were soon swallowed by the rain. Amanda stood alone, rain pouring down on her. Her whole body trembled, but in her eyes flickered an unusual light. She had nothing left to lose. She drew a deep breath, pulled her coat tight, and started walking. Her heels struck the wet pavement, blending with the rain, like a drumbeat announcing the beginning of a new journey. She had gone only a few dozen yards when headlights appeared from afar. A black SUV slowed, its tires slicing through the water. The car pulled over. The window rolled down, revealing a man in his 30s. His dark hair was damp from the mist, his eyes sharp yet calm. He opened the passenger door and held out a black umbrella. His deep, steady voice rose above the rain. "You can't walk home on a night like this. Get in." Amanda froze, her instincts tightening her chest. But his eyes were different, neither prying nor pitying nor scornful. Only calm certainty, like a steady shoulder. "Thank you, but I'll be fine," she said, her voice trembling. The man gave a faint smile and placed the umbrella on the seat. "I'm Adrian Carter, an attorney. Trust me, I just want to help. It's cold out here." Just those 3 words, "I'm an attorney," made Amanda unconsciously exhale in relief. He wasn't some shady passerby. She hesitated, then slowly climbed in. As the door closed, the storm outside seemed to quiet, and for the first time in years, Amanda felt safe. The soft thud of the car door closing cut Amanda off from the thick curtain of rain outside. Inside the SUV, warmth from the heater spread, in stark contrast to the damp cold still clinging to her. Amanda hunched forward, both hands gripping the strap of her purse, her heart still pounding from tension. The man beside her never looked directly at her. He drove with a calmness almost unnerving, both hands steady on the wheel, his eyes fixed on the pitch-black road ahead, where the headlights lit up streaks of silvery rain. In that silence, Amanda caught the faint scent of pine wood drifting from the leather seat. It came from the coat he had draped over her shoulders. That warmth eased her trembling slightly, but inside her wariness knotted tighter. "You really are a lawyer?" she finally dared to ask, her voice hoarse from the cold. The man gave a small nod, eyes still on the road. "Yes, Adrian Carter. I work for a law firm in Boston." Amanda swallowed hard, her hand gripping tighter. Part of her wanted to stay quiet, but another part craved to hear more, if only to push away the fear creeping in. "Why, did you stop for me?" Adrian glanced at her, his dark eyes flashing with something unreadable. He answered slowly, as though wanting her to understand every word. "Because no one deserves to be left alone on a night like this." The simple words struck directly at the deepest part of her. Amanda pressed her lips together, fighting the lump in her throat. Andrew had never once said anything like that, never cared about her fear or her pain. While she sat stunned, Adrian reached into the glove compartment, pulled out a small towel, and set it gently on her lap. "Dry yourself." "You're shaking." Amanda startled. He had just used you in such a natural way, not formal, not condescending, and it threw her heart off balance. She hesitated for a moment, then took the towel, pressing it against her dripping hair. "Thank you," she whispered. Adrian didn't respond, just kept driving, but his hand eased back on the accelerator, letting the car glide slower and smoother. Such a small gesture, yet Amanda realized he was thinking of her comfort. Rain still poured down, streaking across the windshield only to be swept away by the wipers. The faint amber glow from the dashboard lit Adrian's profile. His features were sharp, resolute, touched with both coldness and weariness. Amanda hesitated, then asked, "Do you often drive this road?" Adrian's lips tilted in a half smile, half sigh. "No, but I know some quiet routes. Sometimes I like to drive alone to think." His voice was deep and steady, yet beneath it lurked a weight she could almost sense. Amanda noticed but stayed silent, not daring to pry. Instead, it was Adrian who unexpectedly spoke again. "The man earlier, he's your husband?" The question caught Amanda off guard. She hadn't intended to share with a stranger, but the steady sincerity in his eyes made her feel she didn't need to hide. "Yes, he left me there, just because I asked about money that vanished from our account." Her tone was intended to be calm, but the tremor gave her away. Adrian didn't look surprised. After a pause, he said firmly, "A man like that doesn't deserve you." Amanda froze. For years, all she had heard from Andrew were sneers and criticism. This was the first time anyone, let alone a stranger, had said those words to her. It was like a small flame kindling in the dark corners of her heart. The SUV turned into a small roadside town, where scattered streetlights glowed through the rain. Adrian pulled up in front of a modest but warmly lit inn. He switched off the engine and looked at her. "It's safe here. You can stay the night. I'll come back in the morning if you need further help." Amanda blinked in surprise. He hadn't pried, hadn't pushed her to explain, hadn't tried to invade her life. He simply offered a calm solution. You're not afraid I might be trouble?" A woman left on the road by her husband. Things aren't always what they seem. She found herself testing him. Adrian tilted his head slightly, his eyes holding hers with quiet certainty. "My instincts are rarely wrong. I see that you need safety, and I trust that's true." The straightforward answer left Amanda speechless. A strange sense of trust seeped into her heart, a trust she had never felt, not even with the man she had once called her husband. Before leaving the driver's seat, Adrian placed a business card on the console. "If you need anything in the morning, call me." Amanda picked up the card. The words were clear. Adrian Carter, attorney at law. Her fingers trembled slightly as she held it. The car door opened, letting in cold air and the roar of rain. Adrian came around to her side, opened her door, and held the umbrella above them. His other arm hovered close, ready to catch her if she slipped. At the hotel entrance, Amanda turned back. His figure stood tall beneath the black umbrella, the yellow light casting his face in sharp relief. He looked distant, and yet strangely, his presence steadied her heart. "Thank you, Adrian," she said softly but firmly. He gave a slight nod. Just that, but it was enough for Amanda to realize. Even as a stranger, he had given her something Andrew never had the sense that she was worth protecting. As the black SUV disappeared into the rain, Amanda clutched the card tightly in her hand. Inside her, a fragile seed of hope had been planted. Perhaps her life truly would begin to change from this night on. The small hotel room glowed under a soft yellow lamp, with light spilling across the crisp, white sheets. Yet to Amanda, Everything felt far too large for her small, shrunken body. Outside the window, the relentless rain drummed on, carried by the wind through the distant forest, reminding her of what had happened only hours earlier. Her husband pushing her out of the car and abandoning her in the cold, stormy night. Amanda dropped her handbag on the chair, her hands still trembling. Her soaked high heels made her stumble as she walked. She slipped them off, set them by the door, then collapsed onto the edge of the bed. The coat still draped over her shoulders carried the lingering warmth from the black SUV. Amanda closed her eyes, unconsciously clutching the fabric tighter. That warmth not only soothed her shivers, but also brought back the steady gaze of Adrian, the stranger who had appeared in the rain and spoken 4 simple words. "You're safe now." Those 4 words echoed in her mind like a fragile lifeline, pulling her back from the abyss of despair. Amanda had once been a strong woman. She had worked in finance for several years, earning a steady income. But after marrying Andrew, a polished and successful man on the outside, her life had taken a different direction. At first, Andrew had been charming, indulgent. He bought her flowers, took her to lavish parties, and held her hand tightly in front of friends. Amanda had been swept away, convinced she had found the man of her life. But only a few months after the wedding, the cruel words began. "Dressed like that? Are you trying to embarrass me? You don't understand my work. Don't interfere." At first, Amanda thought it was just stress, fleeting moments of anger. She stayed quiet, tried to make peace, believing love would change him. But silence became her habit, and Andrew began to expect it. When Amanda wanted to return to work, he scoffed. "Don't be foolish. I make more than enough. You just need to stay home and take care of the family. What's the point of women in finance? People will only remember you as Andrew Mitchell's wife." The words cut like a knife. She had once taken pride in managing million-dollar portfolios. However, after being belittled repeatedly, Amanda began to believe her worth was reduced to being a dutiful wife. Andrew never raised a hand against her, but his words were far more brutal. At every party, if she misspoke, his glare was icy. At home, the criticism poured in. "You humiliated me. You don't know how to protect your husband's image." Amanda had cried countless times, but always told herself, "If I stay quiet, it'll pass. He's just stressed from work." But silence never soothed Andrew. It only gave him more power to control her completely. He managed their joint accounts. Every outing, every meeting had to be reported. Friends drifted away because Andrew didn't want her socializing. Amanda was isolated inside her own marriage. Tonight, when she asked about the $10,000 missing from the account, Andrew exploded. To him, her call to the accountant was betrayal. The price she paid was being left behind in the storm, 37 miles from home. Now sitting in the hotel room, Amanda closed her eyes. She could picture Andrew back at their mansion, pouring himself a drink, smug in the belief he had taught his wife a lesson she would never forget. But he didn't know that the lesson would become a turning point. Because when Amanda had been standing in the rain, drenched and trembling, a stranger had stopped, shielded her with an umbrella, and said, "You're safe now." Amanda glanced around the room, the low ceiling, the thick curtains muffling the rain. Yet her heart still pounded. She feared Andrew might come for her, feared she might collapse again, return to him, and apologize just to keep the peace. But her hand tightened around the business card on the table. Adrian Carter, attorney at law. A stranger, a lawyer, a steady gaze. Amanda whispered to herself, "Maybe I'm not completely alone." The thought made her throat tighten, and at last the tears fell. But this time, they weren't tears of helplessness. For the first time in years, she cried because she felt she was worthy of being saved. In the quiet of the night, Amanda thought of her parents. They had worried when she rushed into marriage with Andrew, but she had brushed off their advice, eager to prove her love. Now she couldn't bring herself to tell them the truth for fear of breaking their hearts. She remembered mornings from her single life, sipping coffee, reading the financial paper, jogging around the park. A simple life, but full of freedom. She had traded all that for a prison called marriage. Amanda gripped the coat tighter. She realized she no longer wanted to live this way. The clock neared midnight. She lay down on the bed, eyes wide open, her mind spinning. Adrian's words replayed, No one deserves to be left alone on a night like this. A tear slipped down her cheek, but her lips curved faintly. For the first time in years, Amanda thought of one word: freedom. She knew the path ahead wouldn't be easy. Andrew was powerful, wealthy, and capable of destroying her life with a single signature. But Amanda also knew if she didn't take the first step now, she would remain buried in darkness forever. In the small hotel room, with rain tapping softly outside, Amanda clutched Adrian's card and whispered, "Tomorrow, I'll call him." And for the first time in years, she drifted into sleep, not plagued by nightmares, but touched by the light of hope. The next morning, pale sunlight filtered through the hotel room's heavy curtains. Amanda opened her eyes, her head heavy. She had managed a few hours of sleep, but every dream had been haunted by Andrew, his mocking smile, his icy glare, and the roar of the engine as he left her in the rain. Beside the bed lay the ivory-colored business card. One glance was enough to set her heartbeat into disarray. Adrian Carter, attorney at law. Her trembling fingers brushed the corner of the card. Part of her wanted to shove it into her bag, pretend last night had never happened. But another part, stronger, whispered, "This is your only chance to escape, Andrew." After several minutes of struggle, Amanda took a deep breath, picked up her phone, and dialed the number printed on the card. A deep male voice answered, firm but unrushed. "Carter speaking." "It's me, Amanda," she stammered. I'd like to meet you, if you still mean to help." There was a short pause, then Adrian replied, "All right, send me the address. I'll come." No consoling words, no shallow reassurance. His voice was as cold as a morning lake, but strangely, Amanda felt reassured. Not pity, not empty comfort, just certainty. An hour later, Amanda sat in the corner of a quiet cafe near the hotel. She chose a table by the window. A cappuccino steamed in front of her, untouched. Her heart thudded as the wooden door swung open. Adrian entered. A tailored gray suit, a dark blue tie, and polished leather shoes. He carried himself with a composed air, so different from the man she had met in the storm. His stride was steady, his gaze sharp, sweeping across the room before settling on her. He approached, set a briefcase on the table, and sat opposite her. "You all right?" His voice was low, devoid of emotion. Amanda gave a faint nod, fingers twisting the strap of her purse. "Thank you for last night." Adrian only dipped his head slightly, his expression still severe. "Tell me everything from the beginning. No small talk, no pleasantries, just a blunt request." Amanda swallowed hard and began. She told him about her suffocating marriage, the insults, the financial control, and finally Andrew abandoning her on the roadside. Her voice shook, faltered more than once. Adrian didn't interrupt. He didn't press. He sat still, dark eyes locked on her, jotting down occasional notes in sharp strokes. His stern presence was intimidating, yet when his gaze flickered back to hers, a fleeting glimmer of quiet empathy shone through. When Amanda finished, silence stretched between them. Adrian set down his pen. "Do you have any evidence?" Amanda blinked, startled. "Evidence? No, not yet." Adrian clasped his hands, his voice measured but unyielding. "Listen, Amanda, your story is believable, but courts don't deal in emotions. They deal in proof. Without it, your husband will twist everything and paint you as a liar." The words cut, cold and sharp. Amanda bit her lip, her chest tightening. She had expected comfort, but instead, she was faced with the raw truth. Her head lowered, her voice a whisper. I don't know if I can." A pause, then the faint clink of silver against porcelain. Amanda looked up. Adrian had ordered her a latte and slid it gently across the table. "Drink. You need to stay clear-headed." His tone remained deep, but softer now. Amanda wrapped her trembling hands around the warm ceramic. Adrian quietly nudged a napkin toward her. No words, just a small gesture that stung her eyes with unexpected tears. Adrian leaned forward, gaze unwavering. "If you truly want out, start today. Record every conversation, save every text, every receipt, every document. Any detail could become evidence." Amanda froze. She had never considered fighting back against Andrew. For years, her reflex had been endurance. But Adrian's steady, uncompromising voice felt like a backbone being handed to her. "Do you think, can I win?" she asked hesitantly. Adrian was silent for a few seconds, then replied, voice low but resolute, "It's not about thinking. I know, if you're brave enough to see it through." It wasn't a romantic promise, but it lit a fire in her chest. Their conversation stretched for nearly an hour. As Amanda rose to leave, she found herself asking, "Why? Why are you helping me? I'm just a stranger." Adrian looked at her, and for a moment a shadow crossed his eyes. He picked up his briefcase and said quietly, "Because once I saw myself in your story." Amanda froze. He said no more, only opened the door and stepped aside for her. But that fleeting sorrow in his gaze spoke louder than words. This man, too, had been betrayed, had known pain deep enough to close off his heart. Back at the hotel, Amanda sat on the bed, staring once more at the business card. She remembered his cold gaze, his sharp voice, but also the latte he had placed before her and the napkin he had slid toward her. Such tiny details. Why did they warm her heart so much? Amanda knew Adrian wasn't the type of man who could be easily approached. He was like a fortress wall, keeping others out. But just being near him, she had felt safer than ever before. She whispered softly, "Maybe I can trust him." And for the first time in many years, Amanda truly thought of one word: trust. That afternoon, Amanda stood before the towering iron gates of the mansion. To outsiders, the house was nothing but luxury and grandeur, but to her it was a gilded cage locked tight. Inside her handbag, Adrian's business card still rested neatly. Amanda gripped the strap firmly, took a deep breath, and pushed the gate open. The marble hallway gleamed coldly under the dazzling chandelier. The familiar scent of Andrew's cologne lingered in the air. He sat in the living room, his suit immaculate, a glass of red wine swirling lazily in his hand. When Amanda stepped in, his eyes swept over her with half disdain, half mockery. "Well, you're back," Andrew drawled, as though she had just returned from shopping rather than being abandoned in the rain. "Did you walk all night, or did you finally figure out how to beg someone for help?" Amanda froze, her heart pounding, but she lowered her gaze to hide it. In her mind, Adrian's warning echoed, "Record everything. Every detail matters." She sat slowly across from him, discreetly switching on the recorder hidden in her purse. "I'm back. What do you want me to do now?" Her voice was calm, controlled. Andrew smirked. "Finally learning to ask permission. Good. Remember, Amanda, this is the last time I'll have to teach you a lesson. Next time, I won't be so gentle." Amanda's eyes flickered to the wineglass in his hand, anger stirring inside her, but outwardly she remained docile. "I understand." From that day, Amanda began living two lives. By day, she played the dutiful wife, gentle smiles, soft words. But when alone, she quietly collected every shred of evidence. She photographed Andrew's bank statements, which were left carelessly on his desk. She recorded the insults and threats he hurled whenever he lost his temper. She carefully saved receipts for extravagant purchases with no explanation. Each action made her heart pound with fear. Yet with every saved file, every piece of proof, she felt she held another fragment, another piece of the truth Andrew tried so hard to bury. One evening, as Amanda washed dishes, Andrew walked into the kitchen. He loosened his tie, unbuttoned his shirt collar, and leaned against the counter, eyes sharp as a blade. "You think I don't know? First you call my accountant, and now what else are you sneaking around doing?" Amanda's heart lurched. She knew one wrong move could destroy everything, but she forced a gentle smile, her voice silk. "I just wanted to make sure everything's all right. I don't want to trouble you anymore." Andrew stared hard at her, as if he could pierce through her thoughts. A heavy minute passed. Then he chuckled, patting her cheek. "Smarter now, aren't you? Don't test me again." He walked away, leaving Amanda frozen, her hand clutching the wet spoon. In the coat hanging nearby, the small recorder Adrian had given her was still running. Relief washed over her. She had captured another critical piece of evidence. Late that night, when Andrew had gone upstairs, Amanda slipped into the small study. Trembling, she called Adrian, her voice hushed as if the walls themselves had ears. I recorded something. He admitted to leaving me and threatened worse. What should I do next? Adrian's steady voice came through, firm and calm. Keep everything safe. I'll arrange a place for you to send copies. Don't trust your phone or computer at home. And remember, never let him suspect. Hearing his voice, Amanda's heartbeat slowed. He wasn't comforting, nor was he warm, but his certainty gave her direction. It felt as though she would never be lost if she followed his instructions. Before hanging up, Adrian hesitated briefly, then added, "You did well, Amanda." Just 4 words. Yet they blurred her vision with tears. No one had told her she had done well in years. In the days that followed, Amanda carefully maintained her role as the submissive wife. Andrew paraded her at parties, his arm around her as if they were the perfect couple. To friends, he laughed, praised her, while Amanda forced smiles to hide her trembling. But once home, his mask fell. The cutting words, the suffocating control. Amanda recorded it all. Each playback made her chest ache, but inside something small and fierce began to grow. For the first time in years, she no longer felt completely powerless. Each saved file was another crack in Andrew's armor of control. And outside that armor stood a cold, distant man, but one who was always there, steady and reliable, Adrian. One night, standing at the bedroom window, watching the city lights twinkle in the distance, Amanda whispered, "Andrew may think he's won, but he doesn't know. This is only the beginning." In the darkness, she clenched the small USB drive hidden in her palm, the one containing her first recordings. Her eyes glimmered with a determination she had never known before. The mansion was cloaked in darkness. Only the faint glow of a table lamp in the living room cast a pale yellow light onto the ceiling. Amanda stepped inside, her heart pounding as she saw Andrew waiting on the sofa. A glass of red wine swirled in his hand. His eyes locked on her like a predator eyeing prey. "You're late." His voice was icy. "Where have you been, Amanda?" Amanda froze, her whole body tense. Her hand tightened on her purse strap, but she forced herself to relax, managing a strained smile. "I just went for a short walk, to clear my head." Andrew let out a dry laugh, then stood. The sound of his shoes striking the hardwood floor echoed ominously. He stepped closer, leaned down, and whispered, "You've been strange lately. Secretive. Is there something going on that I don't know about?" The reek of alcohol on his breath made Amanda's stomach churn. Her throat closed up, but in her pocket, the small recorder Adrian had given her was already running. She had to stay calm. No, nothing at all," she stammered. Andrew gripped her chin, forcing her to meet his eyes. They glinted with a sharp, threatening light. "Remember this, Amanda? I hate betrayal more than anything. If you do something stupid, don't blame me for being ruthless." Then he shoved her face away and strode up the stairs. His footsteps faded, leaving Amanda trembling in the living room, her hands still clenched tightly around the recorder. The next day, Amanda gathered her courage and met Adrian again. The same small cafe was quiet, soft light streaming through the window panes. Amanda sat with her palms damp against the cup in front of her. When Adrian entered, wearing a dark suit and his usual cold expression, her throat tightened. He sat across from her, eyes sharp. "What do you have for me?" With shaking hands, Amanda pulled the recorder from her bag and set it on the table, sliding it toward him. He threatened me. I recorded everything." Her fingers trembled so badly she gripped her coffee cup to steady them. Tears spilled, dripping onto the back of her hand. Adrian said nothing. He switched on the device, listening as Andrew's cold voice filled the quiet space. "If you do something stupid, don't blame me for being ruthless." For several minutes, only the recording echoed in the silence. When it ended, Adrian sat still, his expression unreadable. But for a fleeting moment, Amanda caught a glimmer of quiet empathy in his eyes. Her voice broke into a whisper. "I've been too weak. I'm afraid I won't survive this." Adrian placed the recorder down, his fingers tapping lightly on the table. Then he spoke, slow but resolute. "No, you're braver than anyone I've ever met." Amanda's head snapped up, startled. His gaze was still cool, but his words carried a rare sincerity. "You know, I understand what betrayal feels like," Adrian continued, his eyes momentarily distant. "My ex-wife, she betrayed me at the very moment I trusted her most. After that, I learned to shut myself off. On the outside, I look cold, but inside, he gave a faint, bitter smile. All that's left are scars. Amanda sat speechless. She had never imagined that a man so strong, so composed, carried such hidden wounds. But you're different, he went on. You still chose to stand up, even when cornered. That makes me respect you. Fresh tears welled in her eyes, not only from pain, but from finally being seen. After years of Andrew's humiliation, it was the first time someone had told her she was courageous. Adrian tucked the recorder into his briefcase, his expression hard again. But his voice, though deep, carried a hint of warmth. From now on, you're not just a victim. You're a witness. Every piece of evidence you bring will take us one step closer to ending Andrew's power. Amanda nodded, quickly wiping her tears. The fear remained, but now it was laced with something else. Hope. As she left the cafe, she lifted her gaze toward the gray sky. The clouds were still heavy, but she knew somewhere, light had begun to break through. That afternoon, the court notice arrived. Amanda sat frozen on the sofa, the thick file heavy in her hands, the countersuit, the list of witnesses, and the name of the high-profile attorney Andrew had just hired, a name even ordinary people recognized from the legal news. Richard Blackwood, she whispered, her voice catching. Just reading the name sent a chill through her entire body. Andrew didn't just want to fight back. He wanted to crush her. When Adrian arrived, she was still sitting there, eyes red, papers scattered across the table. He stood silent for a moment, then bent down, gathered the documents one by one, and placed them back together neatly. His words were short, steady. This is exactly what I expected. He was never going to give up easily. Amanda bit her lip, tears spilling again. But I can't do this. He has money, power, and now one of the best lawyers in the city. And all I have is you. Her voice broke, fear overwhelming everything for a moment. Adrian studied her quietly. His eyes darkened, not with coldness, but with deep empathy. He handed her a tissue. You have evidence. You have the truth, and you have me. That's enough. But Amanda shook her head, voice trembling. I'm so tired. I just want to give up. Adrian said nothing more. He simply took her hand and gave it a gentle pull. Amanda blinked in surprise, but before she could react, he was already leading her outside. The sky was heavy and gray, and then the rain came down thick and heavy, with drops pounding against rooftops and sidewalks. Adrian opened his black umbrella, holding it firmly above her. Amanda walked beside him, listening to the steady drum of rain on the fabric. The cold seeped into her skin, but strangely, her heart felt calmer than it had in days. For a long while, Adrian said nothing. Then his deep voice rose, clear even above the downpour. He wants you to break. But if you stand tall, then he'll be the one who trembles. Amanda stopped in her tracks, looking up at him. Rain poured down his shoulder, soaking one side of his suit, but he didn't seem to notice. He tilted the umbrella toward her, shielding her completely from the storm. But I'm not as strong as you think, she whispered. Adrian paused, his gaze steady and unwavering. No, you're stronger than you imagine. A woman who dares to rise against the man who's controlled her for years. That's real strength. His voice wasn't loud, but every word landed like iron, driving straight into Amanda's heart. Suddenly, tears spilled again, not from weakness, but because, for the first time in years, someone saw the strength in her. Not her mistakes, not her helplessness, but the resilience she didn't even realize she had. Adrian didn't add more. He simply reached out, rested a hand lightly on her shoulder, and continued walking, holding the umbrella over her the whole way. Amanda glanced sideways. Rain had dampened his brow, strands of hair clinging to his forehead. His usual coldness no longer felt intimidating. Instead, she saw determination, a solid presence she could lean on. For the first time, Amanda realized Adrian's strength wasn't a cold wall, but a shoulder someone else could rest against. When they stopped beneath a building's awning, the rain still poured in sheets just beyond. Amanda turned to him, her eyes still glistening. Do you really believe I can do this? Adrian looked at her, his gaze deep and for once warm. I believe. Two simple words. Yet they made Amanda's whole being tremble. Amid the storm, she felt her fragile trust begin to solidify, not because of grand promises, but because of the steady presence of the man beside her. The courtroom gleamed under the harsh fluorescent lights. Amanda sat at the plaintiff's table, her hands ice cold and clenched tightly together. Across from her, Andrew adjusted his tie, his face calm in that same false way he always wore. Beside him sat Richard Blackwood, the star attorney, flipping open his case file, a confident smirk tugging at his lips. The session began. Richard stepped forward, his voice booming. "Your Honor, what we have here is nothing more than an emotional divorce case. But emotions are not evidence. My client, Mr. Andrew Mitchell, is a successful businessman and a devoted husband. These allegations of psychological abuse are exaggerated in an attempt to gain an unfair share of the marital assets. There are no injuries, no medical reports, only one-sided claims." He paused deliberately, then glanced toward Amanda. "We believe Mrs. Mitchell is exploiting the legal system to humiliate her husband." A murmur rippled through the audience. Amanda felt the blood drain from her face, her palms damp with sweat. Her throat tightened. Was everything about to be dismissed again, just as it always had been? Richard presented glossy news articles about the couple's glamorous appearances, including photographs of Amanda and Andrew smiling at parties, as well as statements from acquaintances praising their marriage. One even said they envied Amanda for having such a successful, attentive husband. Her head lowered. Amanda nearly collapsed under the weight of it all. Then beneath the table, a hand squeezed hers firmly. Adrian. He didn't look at her. His eyes were fixed forward, but his grip was strong and steady. "Look at me," he murmured, voice deep and resolute. Amanda lifted her gaze, meeting the depth of his eyes. In them there were no pretty promises, only trust, a trust she had been starved of for years. Adrian rose, his voice resonant, sharp yet calm. "Your Honor, the defense claims there is no evidence. But we do have evidence. Here is a recording Mrs. Mitchell captured in her home, in which Mr. Mitchell admits to abandoning his wife on the roadside as a so-called lesson." The click of the machine filled the room. Then Andrew's voice cut through the silence, cold, contemptuous. "I left you on the side of the road so you'd remember your place. You think you have the right to question me? I make the money, I manage it. You should just stay quiet and behave." The room erupted. Some in the gallery gasped. The judge's brow furrowed, her eyes sharp. Adrian played further clips. Andrew belittling Amanda, warning her not to embarrass him, reminding her she had no control over their assets. Amanda trembled, but this time she didn't look away. Each word of the recording cut like a blade, but it was also the truth, finally laid bare. When the last clip ended, Adrian set the recorder down. Amanda drew a deep breath, then unexpectedly rose to her feet. At first her voice shook, but as she spoke it grew clear, strong. "Your Honor, for years I stayed silent. I believed if I endured, our marriage would be peaceful. But the truth is I was imprisoned in contempt and control. I was stripped of my voice." She turned toward Andrew, her fear gone. "Today I take that voice back, not just for myself, but for every woman who has ever been forced into silence." Her words rang through the courtroom. Adrian looked at her, his eyes flickering with pride and sorrow. He knew what it had cost her to speak those words after a lifetime of fear. Andrew shot to his feet, shouting, "You liar! Amanda, you're making this up. This is all about money." Richard tried to pull him back down, but Andrew struggled, his face red, his eyes wild. The polished mask shattered, exposing the furious, controlling man beneath. The judge pounded her gavel. "Mr. Mitchell, control yourself. One more outburst and you will be removed from this courtroom." The gallery buzzed as journalists scribbled frantically. The judge adjusted her glasses, voice grave. "The evidence is clear. Mr. Mitchell admitted to abandoning his wife in dangerous conditions, coupled with repeated verbal abuse and financial control. This constitutes psychological and financial abuse under this state's marriage law." She paused, eyes fixed on Andrew. "Mr. Mitchell, the court orders all joint assets will be divided in a manner unfavorable to you. Mrs. Amanda Mitchell is awarded the majority share of assets, the marital home, and ongoing spousal support. You are prohibited from approaching her within 500 feet. Additionally, your financial records will be forwarded to the Fraud Investigation Unit for criminal review. The gavel struck. Court adjourned. Amanda stood stunned, tears streaming down her face. She could hardly believe her ears. Justice had spoken. Andrew, the man who had terrified her for years, now sat slumped, stunned, his world collapsing around him. Adrian's hand found hers again, this time not to steady her, but to congratulate her. His grip was firm, his gaze quiet, filled with pride, yet shadowed by sorrow for all she had endured. Through her tears, Amanda smiled. She knew in this moment that she was finally free. The morning after the verdict, news outlets lit up with breaking headlines. Court freezes Andrew Mitchell's assets. Criminal investigation expanded. Commentaries followed, with legal analysts speculating on charges of financial fraud, asset concealment, harassment, and coercion. Amanda closed her laptop. Her newly rented apartment was silent. The cream-colored walls still smelled faintly of fresh paint, and the wooden table carried the scent of secondhand polish. Everything was smaller, simpler than the old mansion, but it was hers. Still, a hollow space lingered inside her chest. Freedom had rushed in like a gust, flinging open the door. But when the dust settled, the room within felt empty. No more keys rattling in the lock at midnight. No more footsteps sweeping in, eyes scanning to see if she was obedient. No immediate enemy to brace against. Only silence, and in that silence, she suddenly didn't know what to do with her hours. She brewed a pot of tea and sat by the small window. Outside, the clouds hung heavy, the afternoon light gray. Her phone buzzed. A cautious congratulations from an old friend, an official email confirming the restraining order, and a short text from Adrian. "You okay?" Amanda typed back, "Okay," erased it. Typed, "I'm not sure," erased again. In the end, she sent nothing. She didn't want her sadness to spill into words. By early evening, a knock sounded at the door. 3 times steady, firm. Amanda peered through the peephole, then opened. Adrian stood there, dark shirt, tie removed, a brown paper bag in hand. The cold air followed him in, but his eyes were warm. "What are you doing here?" she asked, her voice raspy from a day of silence. "Checking if you've eaten," he replied simply. No comfort phrases, no theatrics. Just a fact, in the way he did everything. He carried the bag to the kitchen and unpacked it. A loaf of bread, eggs, greens, butter, a red onion, a carton of chicken stock. Amanda leaned against the doorway, watching the neat efficiency of his movements, which were both strange and yet oddly reassuring. "You know how to cook?" "Enough not to starve." He rolled up his sleeves. "Do you have a pot?" She pointed to a small one on the shelf. He rinsed it, set it on the stove. Blue flame flickered to life. He didn't ask about the court or the press or Andrew. His silence wasn't like the emptiness of her morning. It had structure, like a roof. Under it, she stayed dry. The smell of onions sautéing filled the kitchen. Adrian melted butter, swirled the eggs until they were soft and golden, and sprinkled on pepper. In the pot beside him, he stirred the simmering stock and dropped in the greens. The sound of the knife tapping, the ladle scraping, the steam fogging the window, it was all grounding. Amanda flipped on the vent. "Do you need me to help?" "Sit," he said. "Drink water." He poured her a warm glass and slid it across the table. The gesture was small, natural, like he'd long practiced noticing what others needed before they asked. 15 minutes later, dinner was ready. Steaming chicken and vegetable soup, butter-soft eggs and crisp bread. No wine, no candles, no staging. Just a meal for someone who had weathered a storm. Amanda lifted her spoon. The first sip warmed her chest. She couldn't remember the last time someone had cooked for her. In the old house, meals had always been prepared by hired chefs, plated for show, for Andrew's reputation. Here, every bite carried one intent: to feed, to warm, to keep her from feeling alone. "It's good," she whispered, her throat tightening. "Thank you." Adrian nodded. He ate slowly, his focus intense, as if he were studying a difficult case. After a few spoonfuls, he set it down. "Tomorrow I'll send you a list. Open a new account, change your passwords, Schedule some counseling services if you'd like. No rush. We'll do them one at a time. She looked at him. Do you ever feel empty? After winning? Yes, Adrian answered immediately without thought. When the fight ends, the adrenaline drops, and what's left is silence. Silence that hums in your ears. You get through it with small things. Eating, sleeping, walking, calling someone you trust. You don't always need to talk. Just knowing someone is there is enough. Amanda smiled faintly. You knocked on the door. I didn't need a call. The corner of his mouth curved just barely. She realized she had learned to read his subtle shifts, the easing of tired lines, the small release in his shoulders. They finished the meal in companionable quiet. Adrian stood to wash dishes, warm water rushing into the sink. Amanda instinctively moved to help, but he stepped aside with a shake of his head. Let me. She leaned on the counter, watching the efficiency of his hands as he stacked bowls on the rack and wiped the counter in small circles. Her chest eased, as if setting down a stone she hadn't known she carried. Andrew's assets are frozen, she said at last, as if confirming it to herself. He might go to prison. Adrian turned down the water. The criminal case belongs to the prosecutor. What belongs to you, your new life that's ours to build? Ours. The word landed softly, not loudly or brightly, but sank deep. Amanda nodded, as if accepting a thin blanket offered quietly. They moved to the living room. No expensive sofa, just 2 wooden chairs and a small gray woven rug. Amanda brewed more tea, and the mint leaves released their fragrance. Are you afraid tonight? Adrian asked after a pause. She listened inwardly. To her surprise, the answer came clear. Not like before. Why not? Amanda looked toward the kitchen. On the table sat the still warm pan, the tilted pot lid, and 2 bowls left to dry. Because tonight someone stood there and cooked, she said, startled by the simple truth of it. Because someone thought about whether I had eaten, not whether I had embarrassed him. Adrian didn't interrupt. He just listened. That habit of listening fully made her feel seen without being scrutinized. Tomorrow I'll buy some plants, she went on, her voice lighter. Mint, rosemary, maybe a little cactus. I want this kitchen to smell of more than paint. I can bring a decent knife set, Adrian replied. The ones you have are too dull. Amanda laughed fully this time. What kind of lawyer critiques kitchen knives? Habit, he said calmly. Good tools make life less tiring. The clock slid past 10. Adrian stood. I should go. It's late. Amanda walked him to the door. At the threshold, he paused, studying her as if to make sure her broken edges were truly holding. If you can't sleep tonight, call me. You don't need to say anything. You'll just listen to me breathe? Yes, he nodded. That's enough. The door closed. The apartment sank back into quiet, but not the empty quiet of morning. Amanda went to the kitchen, lifted the pot lid, and inhaled the aroma of the lingering broth. She shut off the stove fully, rinsed her teacup, and hung the towel neatly. Small things, very small, but as she did them, she felt her heart beat steady. She stood in the doorway, gazing at the 2 wooden chairs and the gray rug, waiting for footsteps. Her eyes stung suddenly, not from sorrow, from warmth. For the first time in years, Amanda felt the weight of something ordinary yet precious. A kitchen where someone truly cared. Not a house staged for display, but a home being pieced together one fragment at a time by the steady, quiet hands of a man who seemed cold, yet always tilted the umbrella toward her in the rain. She touched the wooden table, smiling. After the storm, the sun had not yet blazed, but a small flame had been kindled enough to make this night warm, and tomorrow she would buy a few plants. Loving this story? This story belongs to Soul Stories. If you see it anywhere else, please come back to our official channel to enjoy it in full. In the weeks after the trial, Amanda began waking earlier than she used to. She brewed a strong pot of coffee, opened her laptop, and dusted off the professional portfolio she had abandoned for years, updating her certifications, adding short courses on risk management she had completed at night, reworking cash flow models and valuation templates. On her job platform, the status bar turned green. Open to work. She sent out her first emails with understandable hesitation. Part of her feared people would remember her only as the abandoned wife in the headlines. But each time she hesitated, Adrian's dry yet steady voice echoed in her mind. We'll do this one step at a time. She drew a breath and pressed the send button. Alongside her job search, Amanda directed much of the settlement money and her monthly support allowance into establishing a small foundation for abused women. She named it Light. She chose the name during a sleepless night, sitting at her window, staring at raindrops clinging to the mint leaves she had just planted. Light didn't erase darkness all at once, but it was enough to show a path forward. Adrian handled the legal framework, drafted bylaws, ensured financial transparency, and filed for nonprofit tax exemptions. On their first weekend working session at a rented co-working space, he slid a stack of papers toward her. Article 3 mission statement. That part should come from you. It has to be your voice. Amanda picked up the pen. Words flowed onto the page. Provide tools for psychological, financial, and legal self-defense. Help women step out of cycles of fear through small, practical steps. At that line, her hand faltered. Adrian didn't push. He only nudged a fresh cup of coffee toward her, silent as always, but steady enough to carry her through the tightness in her chest so she could finish writing. The Light Foundation began with a single email address, a phone line, and a desk covered in sticky notes. Emergency support, restraining orders, basic financial advice, safe housing network. Small pieces, but pieced together, they formed a way out. The day Amanda decided to visit her mother, she called Adrian at noon. Are you busy? I'd like you to come with me, if that's okay. On the other end, only one word. Yes. 2 hours later, the SUV pulled up to the small house at the end of a quiet street. Mrs. Harriet opened the door, silver hair pinned back, the scent of waffles in the air. When she saw her daughter, she asked nothing about the news, the trial, or Andrew. She only wrapped Amanda in a long, tight embrace, long enough for her tense shoulders to finally let go. Adrian lingered at the edge of the porch, almost trying to shrink smaller. Harriet glanced at him, eyes gentle but sharp. You must be Adrian? Thank you for bringing my Amandy home. Amanda laughed, a bell-like sound she hadn't made in years. Her parents had always called her Amandy when they wanted to soothe her. In the warm kitchen scented with cinnamon, they sat around the round table. Harriet cut the waffles, asked simple questions. Did you eat well? Are your balcony plants thriving? Then she placed her hand over Amanda's, squeezing gently. You've walked through it. Now keep walking forward. Slow is fine, but don't look back. Turning to Adrian, she added, if she gets tired, remind her to eat. She forgets. Adrian's reply was a single word but solid as stone. Yes. No promises, no speeches, just a pillar of certainty. On the drive back, Amanda leaned her head against the seat, smiling softly. My mom likes you. Adrian kept his eyes on the road. I like your mom too. She laughed. For the first time in years, family talk wasn't about judgment or criticism, but about waffles and gentle reminders. Days later, the replies started arriving. A fintech startup invited her to consult on a 3-month project, building an internal control framework, auditing approval processes. A nonprofit asked her to teach basic financial literacy at a women's shelter. A small law firm requested her independent analysis of cash flows in a dispute. Amanda returned to spreadsheets, cells filling with data, formulas running smoothly, as cash flow charts rose and fell like music. For the first time in years, she felt her old energy return, the focus, the satisfaction of a model balancing perfectly, the quiet thrill of solving a difficult formula. She brought the tougher cases to Adrian's desk. In the evenings, they sat across from each other at the co-working space, laptops open under the warm desk lamps. Amanda explained a credit risk model. Adrian combed through the contract clauses, pointing out where obligations could be dodged. Both paused when the Light Foundation hotline rang this time, a woman needing an urgent restraining order that night. I'm coming with you, Adrian said, no need for questions. At the courthouse, they sat through the long night in the hallway. Amanda handed the woman a thermos of tea she had prepared, while Adrian drafted the affidavit and walked her through the process step by step. When the temporary order was signed, the woman wept into Amanda's shoulder. Amanda held her, realizing she no longer trembled in court corridors, because beside her stood a tall, steady figure, quiet as a tree. Not all days were heavy. On some afternoons, she reconnected with old friends. At a cafe near the park, Leslie, an old colleague from the asset management firm, hugged her tightly. "I'm sorry I disappeared. I didn't know what to do." Amanda shook her head. "It's okay. I didn't know who to ask either." They planned to review an investment proposal for a scholarship fund that Friday. After leaving, Amanda texted Adrian, "I picked up another job." He replied with a single thumbs-up emoji. But that evening, when he stopped by her apartment, he carried a small bundle of rosemary wrapped in newspaper. "For your kitchen garden." Every night, Amanda watered her plants, mint, rosemary, and cactus. Her hands no longer trembled. She taped a note to the fridge. 3 things daily: eat, work, breathe. Below it, she pinned her schedule, meetings, and a list of names from the Light Foundation, with notes beside them. Temporary housing approved. Call back Monday. Lawyer shift confirmed. One evening, after they had finished drafting a complex filing for the foundation, Adrian stood, rolling his wrist. Amanda poured more tea, hesitating. "I'm scared. People will say you and I are inappropriate. That a lawyer and his client." Adrian leaned against the table, meeting her gaze, steady as ever. "I'll hand off every remaining case to a colleague if that's what you want. I won't let anything compromise your comfort." Amanda shook her head. "I don't want you to leave. I'm learning how to name things. We started with trust, right?" "Right," Adrian said. One word, nailed into the ground. He laid his hand, not gripping, just resting on the back of hers, the same way he had in the courtroom. "We'll go at your pace." Amanda looked down at that hand, the same hand that had held hers in court, steered the wheel on the drive to her mother's, and stirred soup in her small kitchen. Between them, silences no longer felt awkward. There were spaces to hear the city's hum at night, the clock ticking, the mint plant tapping against the window pane in the breeze. One morning, an email arrived confirming a 6-month advisory contract with the fintech startup. At the same time, the Light Foundation received its first major grant. A local business pledged 3 months of housing costs for 4 families. Amanda stood in the kitchen, hugging the email as if it were warm in her arms. She texted Adrian, "Good news X2." He replied, "Celebrate tonight." The celebration was nothing more than spaghetti with tomato sauce and 2 mugs of herbal tea. Adrian brought the promised knife set. He sharpened one blade quickly, slicing through a tomato clean and effortlessly. "Good tools make life less tiring," he repeated. Amanda laughed, then grew quiet, glancing around her kitchen. She saw their shadows side by side on the wall, by the spice shelf lined with mint and rosemary. It wasn't a romantic painting. It was an ordinary picture of life, something she had longed for without knowing. That night, before turning off the light, Amanda wrote in her journal, "Learning to live again isn't about doing a lot. It's about doing the right small things. Eat warmly, sleep enough, help one person, sign one contract, plant one pot, speak one honest word." Below it, she drew 2 check boxes. Foundation, first funding. Work, long-term project. Then she added a third, unmarked, heart, opening. Outside, the city lights glimmered. In the small kitchen, 2 mugs were dried upside down, knives wiped clean, and rosemary lingered in the air. The thread between them, once lawyer and client, was now clearer in the unnoticed acts. A carefully drafted clause, a simmering pot of soup, a hand resting on hers to remind her she was not alone. 2 wounded hearts were learning to let in the light slowly, quietly, but steadily. Enough to warm a kitchen, enough to begin a new life. It was late at night. Windows along the narrow street had gone dark one by one, leaving only a few yellow street lamps casting their glow onto the damp pavement after the evening rain. Adrian's SUV pulled up in front of Amanda's apartment. The engine went silent, yet the warmth of their unfinished conversation lingered inside the car. Amanda leaned back against the seat, eyes tracing the raindrops clinging to the windshield. The entire evening had been spent working on an urgent case for the Light Foundation. A woman who needed an emergency restraining order. Once everything was resolved, they left the courthouse exhausted but relieved. Now in the dim quiet of the car, the silence seemed to wait for something unsaid. She turned to him. Adrian still sat behind the wheel, the lamplight carving the stern lines of his face. But Amanda knew now. Behind that cold exterior was a man who had stood by her every step since the night they met. Adrian, she began, hesitant. He tilted his head toward her, eyes questioning. Have you ever thought, maybe we met not just because of the case? Her voice trembled, though her eyes shone clear in the dark. The question fell into the silence. Adrian didn't answer right away. Instead, he leaned back, gaze fixed ahead. His fingers tapped lightly against the wheel, his habit whenever weighing words that weren't easy. Time stretched. Amanda felt her heartbeat pounding, each thud echoing in her chest. She feared she had been too forward, that he would retreat. But just as she was about to pull back, Adrian spoke. I used to be afraid of loving again. His voice was low and husky, as if drawn from a distant place. My past wasn't easy. The woman I once called my wife betrayed me. The way trust shattered, it kept me from opening my heart to anyone else. He turned to her then, his eyes dark and fathomless. But you've made me want to believe again. Amanda held her breath. The world seemed to still, the hum of cars fading down the street, the whisper of wind through the trees, even her own heartbeat suspended for a moment. You really mean that? She whispered. Adrian gave a slight nod. I don't speak much, but over the past few weeks, watching you stand up to Andrew and reclaim your voice, I realized I'm no longer afraid. Not because I'm stronger, but because I trust you won't break that trust. Tears welled in Amanda's eyes, not from sorrow, but from the swell of emotion. In the dark, their old wounds seemed to illuminate each other, weaving into a fragile but genuine new bond. She reached out. Adrian's hand closed over hers instantly, firm, warm, unwavering. In that moment, no more words were needed. He leaned toward her, and she closed her eyes. The kiss came naturally, tender yet trembling, like the first raindrop falling on parched earth after a long drought. At first it was a cautious, tentative brush, searching for a way into each other's world. But then the long-suppressed yearning broke open. The kiss deepened, warmer, carrying all the unspoken things they hadn't dared to say. Amanda felt his breath merge with hers, her heart racing yet strangely calm. This was not possession, nor reckless passion. It was a quiet vow, the beginning of something new. When they finally pulled apart, foreheads still touching, both laughed softly, the light laughter that comes after a storm. Amanda whispered, I think, after everything, we deserve to be happy, don't we? Adrian brushed back a damp strand of hair clinging to her cheek, his gaze gentle. Yes, and this time, I won't let it slip away. She rested against his shoulder, listening to the steady beat of his heart. Outside, a light breeze stirred, carrying the earthy scent of rain through the crack in the window. In that moment, Amanda knew. Love had sprouted quietly, steadily, and it would grow with them. Two hearts once wounded, now finding light in each other. A year had passed since the trial ended. Time had not erased the painful memories, but it had given Amanda enough strength to turn her wounds into power. This morning, the little street was alive with laughter and chatter. Hanging above Amanda was the brand new signboard, Light Women's Support Center. The gentle blue letters gleamed under the sun, like a message that those once abandoned in the dark now had a place to come home to. Amanda wore a simple white dress, her hair tied neatly in a bun. She looked around. Volunteers were setting up the reception desk, and friends and colleagues had gathered in support. Her mother, silver-haired, sat in the front row, her eyes glowing with pride. And beside Amanda stood Adrian, still in his understated dark suit, his gaze stern yet warm. The opening ceremony was simple, but deeply moving. Amanda cut the red ribbon, and the crowd erupted in applause. Her voice trembled slightly, but each word was steady as she spoke. This center was born from my own experience. I once believed I could only be silent, only endure. But I learned that no one deserves to live in fear. Light exists to remind us that every woman has the right to freedom, to love, and to begin again. Moved eyes turned toward her, From behind, Adrian watched quietly. As Amanda bowed, he saw that the once fragile woman had truly become a shining light. That afternoon, as most of the guests departed, Amanda stepped into the small garden behind the center. The late sun spread golden light over the pale lavender blossoms. Birds chirped in the branches above, and the smell of damp earth carried gently on the breeze. Adrian followed, holding a small box in his hand. He paused for a moment, watching Amanda bend over the flower pots. His chest swelled with emotion. The woman who once trembled in court now stood tall in the sunlight, not a victim, but a beacon of hope for others. He stepped closer, softly calling, "Amanda." She looked up. In the glowing sunlight, her eyes sparkled. Adrian drew a deep breath, then sank to one knee. "You've walked through the storm and become the sun," he said, his voice deep and steady. "Give me the honor of walking beside you in all the peaceful days ahead." Amanda froze, her hand rising to cover her mouth. When Adrian opened the box, a small diamond ring shimmered like morning dew under the sun. Tears welled up, spilling down her cheeks. She nodded, her voice choked. "Yes, I will." Adrian smiled, his gaze softening. He slipped the ring onto her finger, then rose, pulling her into his strong embrace. In that instant, the whole garden seemed to glow brighter, sunlight wrapping around them both. As twilight faded, painting the sky in shades of pink and orange, Amanda and Adrian walked hand in hand out of the center's gate. The road ahead stretched into the new dawn of their lives, no longer shadowed by darkness, but lit only by trust and love. Amanda turned to him, smiling through her tears. Adrian tightened his grip, as if promising never to let go. They walked forward together. One chapter had closed, and a new one opened, sweet, healing, and whole.